And let me just say too, I
Mhm.
think the underlining thing though that all brings us together is while the journey may be different, we all have the boulders to face.
We do.
And I think, a lot of this came true for a lot of us through COVID. We were sort of forced to kind of look within and see ourselves. And I think out of that horrible mess has come these conversations and things where we realize, yes, we're different, but maybe we're not so different. And having that commonality to face the boulders and
Yes.
help each other pull us, over the boulders,
Yep.
however that can be, I think that's important.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Hey folks, greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where we empower you to live your best audacious life ever. I'm totally thrilled to be here, and I want to take this moment to extend my appreciation to each of you for carving out time out of your day to join us. This podcast is all about embracing challenges, breaking through barriers, and celebrating the journey of personal growth. Together, we'll explore what it means to live audaciously, cultivating resilience and self-care along the way. Now, imagine life as a winding path with boulders strewn all across it. These boulders represent the obstacles we face, whether they're health issues or personal setbacks or emotional struggles. When we encounter these boulders, we have a choice. We can stop in our tracks and not do nothing, or we can summon our strength to climb over, go around, or even break through them. Just as a hiker navigates rocky terrain, overcoming life's boulders is essential for reaching the peaks of our potential. By embracing this journey, we not only grow ourselves, but also become role models for others who are watching us, especially our children. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Sarah Wilson, a remarkable individual who embodies resilience and transformation. Sarah is a mother, a wellness advocate, and a survivor of a massive heart attack that shifted her perspective on life as well as her health. After being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at a young age, she faced numerous challenges, but ultimately found her way to a holistic healing and personal empowerment journey. Sarah's pathway is a testament to the power of personal growth and resilience. In this episode, she shares her story of confronting life's boulders, the importance of self-care, and how she became a role model for children through her transformative journey. So now that we've got you all set, let's turn to our conversation with Sarah. Enjoy. Hey, Sarah, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here. So thank you.
I am so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. I love the name of your podcast. That is such a great title. That is just, some of them are hit or miss. Yours is a hit for sure. I love the title.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
Listen, so thank you so much. I really, as I said before I pressed record here, I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to share and indulge in conversations like this because they are audacious and they do have the way of bringing the best out of us. And
That's right.
without question. One of the things that we oftentimes talk about here in this podcast is the idea or this premise that we all are on our own individual path. Right? That journey to audaciousness, it's very individualistic. What you do is very different from myself or Sally or Tim or John or whomever. It's different for every single one of us. And it's so important that we live that path that we're on. Now, the thing that oftentimes happens, and I talk about sort of obstacles in life, I equate them to boulders, So boulders are on our path. And when we confront that boulder, we have to make some choices, right? Like, do we stop and, okay, at the end of the journey, or do we find a way to persevere up, over, around, through, however, to get to the other side of that boulder? And I think it's so important to do that because oftentimes that obstacle is the impediment and blocking the way to the greatness that's on the other side. So you've got to find a way to get over that because things do get better, things get uplifted, you're uplifted, and it's such a beautiful premise, and one of the things I'm very proud to be able to talk about. I think this is very, 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 very applicable to yourself because you've had your own journey. And you've had one where, you've
I've
had
had
to
a few
overcome.
boulders.
Yeah, you've definitely had quite a few. And so maybe as a starting point, you, Sarah, can sort of tell our audience a little bit about yourself and sort of what's gotten to you to the point that you're at now.
Definitely. And let me just say too, I
Mhm.
think the underlining thing though that all brings us together is while the journey may be different, we all have the boulders to face.
We do.
And I think, a lot of this came true for a lot of us through COVID. We were sort of forced to kind of look within and see ourselves. And I think out of that horrible mess has come these conversations and things where we realize yes, we're different, but maybe we're not so different. And having that commonality to face the boulders and
Yes.
help each other pull us, over the boulders,
Yep.
however that can be, I think that's important. And so
Yes.
my story isn't unique other than it is my story. And again, we all face boulders. And I found myself really at a crossroads with what I was doing. And unfortunately, it took a huge, massive heart attack for me to face what was I doing and what was I doing wrong.
Mm.
So at 15, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. You can imagine at 15 years old,
Yeah.
I was kind of rebellious, didn't really want to listen, not only to my parents, but definitely not doctors, and
Right.
not take what they wanted to tell me what I should do. Um, and I think it also comes to my own rebellious, I was totally in denial. I was not going to accept what they were telling me. And
Right.
I was, determined to pave my own way, whether that was learning about type 1 or not. So unfortunately, that did some long-term damage. And as we grow up, right, and I was in my 20s and I decided maybe I should take this thing a little more seriously than what I'm doing.
Right.
Thinking of the future, maybe possibly having children one day. And I was told I shouldn't have children. Not that I couldn't, but that I shouldn't. I had
Okay.
spent many years of uncontrolled blood sugars and just not taking care of myself, that it probably wasn't a good idea.
Okay.
Again, I don't listen. I'm very stubborn. You can see the underlying theme here. So I tried to take matters into my own hands, and I wanted a family. This was something that I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And against, the better judgment of others, I pursued ahead, was able to conceive two children,
Okay.
naturally by myself.
Okay.
And, my husband and I thought after two, that was probably the best just to stop. We had
Okay.
a boy and a girl. I also have an older daughter that I adopted. So we were set, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A few things going on.
A few things going on. And, I was so grateful. I mean, I can't, the word isn't enough. I was so grateful to have become a mom,
Yep.
that everything that I started to do, I put into my children. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't put anything into my own. In fact, I suffered so much mom guilt if I ever did anything for myself, that it
Hmm.
was just a complete foreign concept to me. So everything I did went into my children.
Right.
And then again, having to face some very, very hard health problems with having a heart attack 6 days before I turned 43 years old.
Wow.
The unbelievable cliche of this can't be it. I want the second chance. I want to do better. But what
Right.
did that look like, right? We can all say that. But what does that really look like? What does it mean to have to roll your sleeves up and get down and dirty to change, to actually change what the path you were on?
Hmm.
And again, it wasn't that I was living a self-serving life. I wanted to do everything for my children. But
Right.
in doing that, I was missing a big piece of being around long enough to be there for my children. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. So as I entered into this, what they called cardiac recovery, I will call it cardiac sickness until I found my own way. I always say that we have the best emergency medicine in this country by far, but
Hmm.
the maintenance of medicine, we are severely lacking
Gotcha.
completely.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things on my journey I found was this huge world of holistic medicine that offered so much
Right.
promise and joy, and you weren't stuck having to take medications forever, and you weren't stuck having to do these kinds of things. I really latched onto it. It gave me something that I could have hope in, that I could design my life around of what I wanted. Now, it wasn't without trial and tribulation. There were a lot of things
Yes.
I've tried, didn't work. I had to
Hmm.
find what worked.
Hmm.
But in doing that, I became a better mom. I was no longer crabby. I was engaged. I was there with them. And as I started to evolve, so did they. And I saw this kind of change of they're actually looking at me as a role model. They're watching me with my
Yes.
nutrition, my fitness, the things that I'm doing. And I don't feel guilty anymore. They're actually picking up the things that I'm doing. And that's huge. That's
Beautiful.
huge. On top of, I don't want my three children to grow up and think that it's all about giving back to others and not taking anything for
Yes.
yourself.
Self-care. Yeah.
And so that was huge for me. And so one last thing too, I'll say, we absolutely need to take time for ourselves, but
Yes.
there is magic and there is beauty in serving others. So the point, I think, is to find that balance.
Yes, yes, absolutely. No, that balance is also important, and I get it. Like especially when I mean, for example, so I just talked about how much I love podcasting, right? And I can get lost in it, but does that mean I do it all day, every day, and
Right.
maybe ignore other things or ignore myself, right? So it's so beautifully said. It's really important about finding that balance, and I think once you're able to do so, then you sort of things are much more in line, if you will, right, with who you are, what you want to be, and then who you are to other people. In your case, as a parent, who you are to your children.
Exactly. Well, it's that silly cliche, right? They always tell you on an airplane, you have to put the oxygen
Yeah.
mask on yourself first before you do that to somebody else because you'll be better to serve them. And I had it completely backwards, not knowing I was actually hurting myself and them in the process because I was
Mhm.
shortening my life. So just all of these things. And, you can say I'm a slow learner or whatever it is, but I had to have a huge wake up call in order for things to come to fruition for me, for sure.
Um, talk about the heart attack experience and what
Yeah.
that. I'm sure that's a topic many are intrigued at. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so at the time we were living in Colorado, which no offense to people who live in snow, I hate snow. And there's a real big reason why. This was a Friday. I had just come in from shoveling the snow. Okay. Now, and I hear this as a thing. I didn't know this at the time, but there are a lot of heart attacks that happen after people shovel snow. I don't know what it
Mm,
is, the temperature, the sweat, the work, whatever you're doing, that's actually a common thing. Had no idea. So this is a Friday, and I will tell you, no symptoms, no hard of breathing, no chest pain, no back pain, no jaw pain, no headache. I had absolutely nothing. The only thing that I can describe is it felt like I had maybe pulled a pectoral muscle because of shoveling the snow, but it
okay.
wasn't in pain. There was nothing that I could really point to that was like I needed
Right.
emergency attention. So by Saturday, I had really bad time sleeping. Sunday comes and my oldest, knowing that I am a type 1 and maybe things need to be taken just a little bit seriously,
Hmm.
she tells me, and this was complete divine intervention. She tells me, "Mom, I'd rather you go get checked out right now than me having to tell my brother and sister why the firemen are coming through the house because you're on the floor."
Right.
That was all I needed to hear. Boy, if you're
How
a
old?
parent,
At how old? How old is she?
she was 17 at the
Oh
time.
wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, that was all like, because as a mom, we're not going to ask for help. We're not going to stop. We're not like, that's not what we do. So
Yes.
even, I mean, any other caretakers the same way. We're just, my husband worked out of state at the time. So it was me and the kids, and I didn't want to leave them. I certainly didn't want to go to the hospital, but I did.
Hmm.
Thank God for her. Right. So I get in the car, and yes, I drove myself to the
Oh
hospital.
wow.
So this is the narrative that's going on in my head the whole way to the hospital. You crazy lady, they're going to tell you you're having some sort of anxiety attack and they're going to send you home. That's literally what's rolling
Yes.
in my head,
Yes.
okay?
Yes. Yes.
Get to the emergency room, I park. I even stop at like, do I really need to go in? This is so stupid. Why am I going to do? I don't want to bother anybody, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And I go in and wasn't very busy. The little orderly takes me in to do my vitals. And they're like, well, we're just going to hook you up to the EKG machine. And if you're familiar with an EKG machine, a normal heart that's hooked up to this machine, your lines are going up and breathing with your heart. And it's very normal. Mine were going underneath.
Mm,
And at this point, I look up and all of the blood seems to drain from his face. And I'm sort of watching this in slow motion, like, like he's just white as a ghost. He disappears. As he returns, there's 9 people that ascend on me. I've now got 2 IVs in my arms. Like it's just this complete total outer body experience. And the charge nurse is in the room and she's like she's talking to me, but she's not talking to me. And she's saying, you're in the middle of having a massive heart attack. In fact, you've been having this heart attack since Friday. And I'm stunned. What do you say to that? Like,
Yeah.
I'm in complete disbelief. I'm in
Yeah.
complete, like, why are you putting a needle in? What's happening? Where am I going? And all of a sudden, I know my shoes are on top of me and I'm being taken to the cath lab and they're talking about putting a stent in. And I'm just like, hang on, like, time out. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is not happening. Come to find out, because of years of uncontrolled blood sugar and very, very high amounts of stress, that was the loaded gun for the heart attack.
Right.
Come to find out, it was not high blood pressure, it was not high cholesterol, it was uncontrolled blood sugar. And for those with diabetes, that's a very real thing.
Sure.
It's interesting though, as I was told my whole life, the thing that I needed to monitor the most were my kidneys. No one ever told me about my heart. So there's definitely a lack of information out there, I feel, or at least in my case, I was not told. If I was told at 15, I certainly didn't remember that many, many years later.
Sure. Sure.
But there was never a doctor that was like, oh, we probably need to check and make sure everything's going on with the heart. Like, it was always about the kidneys.
Yes. Yes.
Well, come to find out, as I start doing my own research, because I will admit I'm a big nerd, big,
Yeah.
big nerd.
Yeah.
And as I go down these rabbit holes and I start to read these statistics on heart disease,
Mm-hmm.
1 in 3 women, 1 in 3 will have some sort of cardiovascular disease. 1 in 3 will also die. It's the highest number for women. Second is breast cancer, but it is a very far second. Number one.
Right. Right.
And men, interestingly enough, it's 1 in 4. But
Gotcha.
men is what you hear about all the time.
Yes.
You have the
That's right.
widowmaker. You have now again, it's still not a good statistic, but it's 1 in 3 for women. And
Mm.
nobody's talking about it. Nobody's out there. Nobody, it's not, to me, as mainstream as what you hear about with men. And
Right.
why is that? Why is it that we're running under the radar? And again, yes, I had a complication, but this is across the board. Any woman. In fact, if you are a woman over 20 years old, 48% of us are going to have CVD, cardiovascular disease. 48%, that's almost half.
Laugh. Yeah. Wow.
And we're not talking about it. So come to find out as well, again, as I go down these fun rabbit holes, it's a compound effect. And it starts when we go through puberty, and then we have all these hormones that we have to deal with. And then maybe you're a young woman and you decide birth control is in your future, and all of the more hormones that we have, then we have children. And then as we get older and we're going into perimenopause or menopause, these are things that are literally stacked against us to have this cardiovascular disease. And nobody's talking about the compound effect. Nobody tells you when you're starting this, that make sure you're taking care of your heart, making sure you're doing heart healthy things. Nobody's talking about that. I mean, in general they are, but I had to really go and find this information about it being a cumulative effect. That
Right.
should be something that is common knowledge. And again, maybe I was just living in the dark ages, but most of the women that I've talked to have had no idea. So I think I'm pretty safe to say that we really didn't know what's going on with this, with cardiovascular disease. It's a huge, massive thing. Fortunately for me, I can say I'm now 2 years post heart attack,
Wonderful. Congratulations.
but I've had a long recovery journey, and
Mhm.
that has led to different rabbit trails of what works for me, what
Yeah.
doesn't. But if I can say anything, it's women, especially, get those hearts checked, get them checked, most definitely. And then on top of that, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself,
Yes.
bar none,
Yes.
and make sure you're monitoring your stress. We talk about stress in this society like a badge of honor, right? Oh, I'm so
Absolutely.
busy. I'm
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
stressed.
Yep.
Right. With so many things to do.
Yep.
So all this and that. Actually, we should be saying, I'm going to take 10 minutes and go sit in a dark hallway for a second and just collect myself, breathe. I didn't know how to breathe. I literally had to teach myself. Most of us, we breathe very shallow right here, and that's sustainable. But when you actually take those big, deep belly breaths,
Yes.
it's actually resetting your body and
Yes.
doing all these. I had no idea. Who knew? If
I've
you did,
actually,
that's great. I didn't.
yeah, no. I kind of did it's kind of like, for example, laughter. Has so many benefits, and what you've just described is exactly, and it does literally does do a reset, right? And so there's laughter yoga. People do that because it helps
Yeah.
with the overall breathing. So yes, I've recently learned myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing you think something so simple would have these kind of benefits,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
really does. And it's
yeah,
so good. But to actually be intentional, right? We need to be
yeah,
intentful to
yep,
say, I'm taking my 10 minutes. I'm going to do my breathing exercises. Nobody bother me and not feel guilty about that. Right now,
not
there's no
doing that. No,
shame in that. Just do that for yourself and you emerge. I'm not saying all of your troubles go away, but you emerge
mhm,
just in a better headspace for sure.
exactly. And I think what you said the word intentional. I think that is key in all that we do when we talk about self care. It's intentional self care to ensure that we are giving ourselves the required, necessary attention. That in the end, it's for our own benefit and health. And so
Exactly.
that's what we're talking
Exactly.
about. So yeah, I mean, we talked off the top of boulders. There you go. You got a couple big ones there.
Had a few.
Yeah, no, no. How long were you hospitalized?
I was in the hospital about 7 days.
Hmm.
It was, as they start to put you in recovery and things, they want to test you and see the things that you can do. I could barely lift a 3-pound dumbbell. Fast forward 2 years because I made it an intentful decision to weight lift and do those things. I can now deadlift 75 pounds. Thank you very much. And for some, I'm sure that's not anything, but for me,
That's a
coming
big
from
deal.
somebody who couldn't do 3 pounds, this is a huge win for me.
That's a big
And
deal.
just learning my body, right? Learning those kinds of things and being kind to my body. But I will tell you, the physical part is a part of it. Mental is also part of it, and they have to work symbiotically together.
Yes,
If
yes.
you're not taking care of this part, your body's only going to get you so far. And
Mm.
so that was a lot of work that I had to do with myself as well to be, again, intentful and making sure, I had a lot of trauma after that heart attack, physically and mentally. It's a very big eye-opening experience when you're laying there thinking, am I going to see my children again? Am I going to see my husband again? And then coming out of that in the mess that I was in, thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to happen again? And what can I do to make sure this doesn't? But along that came a lot of trauma. There is not any day that doesn't go by that I don't think, man, it's in the back of my head. Am I doing everything that I can
Right,
possibly do? Because this
right.
might happen again, and working through that. And I think part of that is, you talk about the boulders and how it comes in our path.
Hmm.
And yes, it's so important that we get over it, under it, around it, however that looks like. But sometimes sitting next to that boulder and sitting in the mess, as I like to call it, and just riding the waves of what those feelings might feel is actually what you need to do. So then you have the strength to get around or over or under what that mess is. But if you're distracted, if you're trying to push it down, if you don't want to deal with it, if you're
Yep.
trying to escape from it, you're not going to serve yourself anything, because mark my words, it's going to come up one way or another.
Yes. So take care of it when it does is the key in all this. And I think that's a very, very important message. You talked about life being a mess. I would love for you just to expand on that further. The beautiful artwork behind you as a picture of that mess that we call life. I'd love to hear more, Sarah.
Sure. Well, so everything's messy, right?
Yes.
You look at the Instagram, Facebook, whatever you're scrolling on maybe, and you see these aesthetically beautiful things, families, pictures, that whatever. They're lying. I'm sorry, they're lying. Life is messy, but it can be a beautiful mess. And I think that is the key to finding the beauty through the mess, as well as finding your strength through your mess. I have my podcast, Everything's Messy. We talk about other people that have experienced their mess. And the common thread that I see, again, is that everybody has a mess, and uniting with that, and stop with the fakeness and everything's a pretty picture and it's perfect and all of these things. It's not. It can be. You can find beauty. Beauty's anywhere, but
Yes.
stop trying to create it in such an aesthetic way that it doesn't feel real. You want it
It's
to
not
be
authentic.
genuine and raw,
Yes.
right? That's what
Yes.
we're looking for.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the
Yes.
important part. And I just
Yes.
think everyone has so much beauty, so much, but it's messy. It's
Yeah.
messy. And why not celebrate it?
Well, there. I, I think one of the challenges, and I am so first of all, I'm with you wholeheartedly on this messiness of this thing that we call life. Um, in order for us to get to that point where we're owning that mess, we've got to be comfortable with being vulnerable, with being able to tell the full story right? And I think that's where, in a society where so much is based on how again, everything's aesthetically pleasing and looks a certain way. And to know that, wait, well, actually, it's not really good. And my life isn't as wonderful as you
But
might
that's
think it is,
okay.
right?
But that's
And
okay.
I'm with you, it's okay. But the thing that we have to be okay with is being vulnerable to say that. And I think
Yes.
that's a hurdle for a lot of people.
And I'll tell you the other part to that
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
Not only to be vulnerable, but let's be honest here. And I am absolutely had to do this with me. We have to be able to sit down and take personal responsibility and personal accountability. Look, we end up in, making bad choices, whatever it is, but the ownership of that is what I think a lot of people shy away from and don't want to
Yes.
do.
Yep.
And if you can sit down and have a true talk with yourself and take inventory of the things that maybe you shouldn't have done, or maybe you made bad choice. Look, we all make mistakes, but be honest and real about that and take that responsibility and accountability, and then flip it on its ass and be like, okay, what can I do with this? How is this going to charge me forward? But you cannot move past it until you take a good look at how you got to that place to begin with. And I had to. Unfortunately, it took a heart attack for me to get there,
Hmm.
but I took that inventory for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And sometimes it is rock bottom. Like, yeah, like that, like it's that extreme thing that has to happen for you to take charge and make the necessary changes. And so yes, I hear that loud and clear. Um, what sort of things can be, or maybe what did you do to take ownership of your mess?
Yeah. So the first thing definitely is I I had to really sit down and say, okay, what I'm doing is not working. Living on fumes, not feeding my energy, not feeding my soul, not taking care. That's great. If you want to be a good mom, what does that look like? So I had to make boundaries, very
Mm,
specific, laser focused boundaries. And again, there was some maybe friction in the beginning because the kids were so used to just having complete access all the
right,
time, no
right.
matter what. And there was some growing pains, but we were able to do it. I stuck with it. I was consistent. I was intentional, and I stuck with those boundaries that I needed for myself. On top of that, I started habit tracking. If you have never habit tracked, let me tell you, it is an eye opener. Okay. Again, I'm a data nerd. I have to
Okay,
see the
okay.
data. Okay. This may not work for everybody, but for me, it did. Start small with little habits. One of the habits that I started tracking, I wasn't drinking enough water, right?
Okay,
Every
okay.
day I would get a headache. Why do I have this headache? I'm just going to pop some Advil. No big deal. There was a reason why I was having a headache every day. So I started seeing the intake of my water, and I figured out
Mm,
not drinking enough water. That was a huge revelation of how not only that I wasn't drinking, but now how much do I need to add and
mm.
experiment with that. And we're talking, I started very small habits, which led to big habits. Now we're talking nutrition, fitness
Yep,
goals,
yep,
and
yep.
things like
Hmm.
that, which 2 years later I can say have produced gains that I didn't think I would see because I was able to sit down and say, what did I do? What do I want to do? What
Yes,
did I do
yes.
wrong? And so this data for me was very it was focused. Let me say this though. I was somebody that was a very perfectionist, right? I had to let that part die because this journey is not about perfection. And there
Mm,
would be some days I would have on my habits where I needed to walk 3 miles a day. But maybe I was tired. Maybe there were things going on. I only did a mile and a half. Now I say only, that's still celebrate that win. And
yes,
so once I started extending grace to myself and not
yes.
asking for the perfect thing, it was like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. And it made me get up the next day and try that much harder.
I love that. It's very much so. I've always been a big fan of celebrating the wins, and I also and actually this ties into the point I'm about to make here in a moment. But the habit tracking is also very very important because it gives you an opportunity to see all the things that are contributing to your success. So for example, people are trying to lose weight, right? Well, the journey of weight loss is not solely just one thing.
It's
There's a
not.
number of little things that you can do, whether it be the portions of your meal, a little bit more exercise, better food choices. All of those things can contribute to healthy weight loss, and we all know this. I
Absolutely.
mean, we're not
Absolutely.
right. But it's just a matter of doing it. And so, by going through and sort of tracking all the things that you do, you get the opportunity to pinpoint. Okay, this and this is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And and and
But
and
it,
and that, and that and that ties into the celebrating your wins, right? Like,
right.
so if you're celebrating your wins, you give yourself credit for the things that you do, and so that's why those 2 points are integral to one another.
Definitely. But you also have to make sure, because again, it goes back to the psyche, right?
Yep.
You have to make sure that you are truly celebrating and you're not shifting it into a shame cycle, because it's very easy for us
Yes.
to be like, oh, I'm
Yep.
not doing enough. I'm not.
Yep.
That is very, you have to make sure as soon as those negative thoughts happen that you're holding each thought captive and you're replacing it with something that's positive,
Yes.
because it's so easy to slip down. Well,
Totally.
what's the point now? I blew
Totally.
my diet. What's the point now? And the
Totally.
other thing that I will say, and this is this helped me so much. If you've never read the book Atomic Habits, it is an amazing book. And one of the things that really struck out to me was not so, I mean, yes, obviously the tracking the habits, but what stuck out to me was he says in the books, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something to the effect of, if you want to be a fit person, then you
Yes.
need to act like a fit person.
Yes.
And that completely changed everything for me. It wasn't any longer portion control, losing weight. It was, I just want to be a fit
Mindset.
person. What does
That's right.
that look like? And then all of these dominoes sort of came into place of what fit people might do to accomplish that. Again, I am not perfect. I had to let go of that perfection, and I struggle a lot. Please don't think that I've got it all together, because
No.
I don't.
No. No one does.
What I have found though, if
Hmm.
you allow yourself, like some days we just don't feel like it, right? And there's a lot of talk about motivation and self-discipline. And
Yep.
yes, those things play in hand, and that's great. But if your body is telling you you need to rest, you need to listen to your
You
body.
do. You do.
It doesn't mean you sit there for 2 weeks, but it definitely means if you need to rest, listen, your body's trying to tell you something. Rest and leave that shame alone. Don't bring that shame into you. Truly let your mind and your body rest, and then get up the next day and you try again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the grace you talked about earlier, right? We've got
Yes.
to give ourselves
Grace.
grace. So it's all
Yes.
connected. It truly, truly is. And I'm glad you touched on grace. Sarah, one last thing I want to talk about is the importance of wellness activities. So I think for yourself, it wasn't weightlifting, right? Now you're 75 pounds, no
You
problem,
know,
which is awesome to hear. No, what I mean, that's a big deal. Celebrate that. Like I clapped and applauded when you did, because it's a big deal and it does matter. But the importance of finding, but so the point is, for you it was weights, for others it could be something else. So tell me the importance
absolutely.
of finding what that thing is, because you're not
So
gonna, we're not like, we're not on the same path. It's not weights for everybody.
absolutely. Find what you like. Action, because you're going to do it more if you actually like it. And
Mm-hmm.
so fine, I had to actually try a few things. There I tried yoga. I still do a little yoga just for the stretching, but the actual practice of yoga, I'm more upbeat. I needed something a little faster, and that just wasn't my thing. I hear that that's wonderful work and people do great things with it. Same with Pilates. I needed something where I could, like, I don't know, I had some rage in me. I had to get some
Okay.
rage
Okay.
out. So that was where the weightlifting came in. And it's so funny. People are like, "Oh, you lift weights? Aren't you afraid you're going to bulk?" Actually, no, that's a complete falsehood that women tell themselves. Unless you're in the gym for like 12 hours a day, drinking that creatine drink, like
Sure. Sure.
you're just not going to bulk. It's not going to happen. But I feel like, and that was one of the things I told myself going through recovery. It wasn't about getting healthy. It wasn't, I mean, it was about all those things. But the thing I kept telling myself is, I want to be strong. And so to me, when I said I want to be strong, what is going to make me strong?
That's right.
That's the iron. It was
I love it.
pumping that. Yeah. So, but yeah, find what works for you. Don't, again, no shame, no guilt. If you don't meet yourself where you're at, wherever that is, if that's, I'm going to start walking to the mailbox, then do that and be
Yeah.
consistent with it and do it every day,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the point. And then we make these little promises to ourselves,
We do.
and then we want to keep those promises to ourselves. And so then maybe you walk a little bit farther the next day. Walking is an amazing tool. It just takes a little bit. So whatever that looks like. And the other thing that I will say, your body is loves you more than anything out there. It truly does.
Mhm.
And when we start to recognize if we're giving our body the right things, your body will love you back tenfold, because it
Yes.
just needs a little. It's amazing. It's
Mhm.
resilient. It will heal
Yes.
itself. You
Yes.
just got to give it a little bit. So
Mhm.
to me, self-care is probably one of the best forms of self-love you can give yourself. whatever that looks like. But try it, have fun with it. If it's rock climbing,
I
it's
love it.
whatever it is, just find that.
I love it. I love it. No, you're absolutely right. And once we can find that, we can set ourselves up on this path, and allow that journey that we talked about earlier to continue. Or in some cases, it's an evolving journey. It's always changing. It's never,
Always changing.
it's not stagnant. It's not the exact same way. I think you sort of talk about the middle line, right? So it's always evolving into something else. And so,
Yes.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
always say I'm not the before picture, I'm not the after picture, I'm the line in between. I have goals that I'm working towards, but I'm always going to be there. I don't ever want to, we're dead, right? So let's keep going. Let's keep that journey on it. And again, let go of the shame, let go of the
Yes.
guilt, meet yourself where you are. And the other thing too,
Mhm.
you are an expert in you.
That's right.
So any friends that are like, oh, come do this with me. Oh, you don't want to, like, don't let peer pressure or keeping up or comparison, which is just the most evil word I think we can possibly have.
Yes.
Let that go and just be you, whatever that is.
Amazing. Amazing. Sarah, this has been an absolute delight. I so much appreciate your willingness to share and to be open and to help others in the manner in which you have. For listeners that want to learn more about you, or even tune into the Everything's Messy podcast, where can we send them?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Everything's Messy Wellness, as well as Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And you can go to my website, everythingsmessywellness.com, and just share your mess with me. I want to hear about it. I want to know about it. And I'm so appreciative for the work that you do and giving me a chance to share my story. I always say, if I can just help one person, in fact, if one person can just relate and think, man, that's me, or man, like, and it turns them just a little bit, then
Yeah,
the
hey,
job has been done, right?
celebrate, like we said, celebrate.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Sarah, this has been a delight. Thank you. Really appreciate this. Congratulations on the fantastic work, and keep it up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And back we are here on the podcast. During our conversation with Sarah, she shared profound, insights. It wasn't just about surviving; it was about thriving. After my heart attack, I realized that I needed to take care of myself, not just for me, but for my children. And I wanted to be a role model. I had to show them what self-love and resiliency look like. Her words remind us that overcoming obstacles is not just about the challenges we face, but about the choices we make in response to those challenges. Now, if you resonate with Sarah's journey and like to connect with her directly, you can find her contact details in the show notes below. She's certainly eager to share her insights and support anyone on their path to personal growth. I would encourage you, again, she's fantastic and a great person to chat with. She also has some resources that are designed to empower individuals to live a healthier, more fulfilling life, and I'd encourage you to connect with her. Thank you for tuning in to the Audacious Living Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, I'd encourage you to like, follow, subscribe, or share if you haven't done those things already. This is the type of support that helps this podcast continue to grow and inspire others to live their most audacious lives. Remember, every boulder you face is an opportunity for growth. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.